Bobby Veach. As the cleanup hitter on one of the strongest offensive teams of his day, Bobby Veach was one of the truly great RBI men of the late dead ball era, easily leading the major leagues in runs driven in over the 12 years, 1913 to 1924, that he was a full-time player. Veach drove in over 100 runs in a season 6 times, hit 30 or more doubles 8 times, smacked 10 or more triples 10 years in a row. In all, Veach played for 14 major league seasons and hit 300 or better 10 times, finishing with a lifetime .310 batting average. Veach was known to be easygoing, steady, unassuming, characteristics that put him in stark contrast to, and at times at odds with, the volatile Ty Cobb. He just had a lot of haters. But when you succeed at something and do really well, people will hate you. Who played next to him? At 5 feet 11 inches and a slim 165 pounds. Veach was small for a power hitter, but as baseball writer Fred Lieb noted, he packed a terrific punch for his size. As a right-handed fielder who batted from the left side, which is rare, that's probably because he was forced to be a right-hander. Back then, that's what they would do to you. Veach was a full and free swinger. He rarely altered his picturesque swing to adjust to pitchers, slumps, or game situations. For this reason, he was remarkably consistent offensively, although he sometimes struggled to execute situational hitting staples, like the hit and run. Although regarded as awkward in the field and on the base paths while in the minor leagues, Veach was always blessed with a strong and accurate arm and a good natural speed as a runner. In time, he worked hard to make himself an accomplished fielder, recording over 300 putouts 6 times and over 10 assists 11 times, as well as a frequent base stealer, swiping 195 bases in his career. Robert Hayes Veach was born in Island, Kentucky on the 29th of June, 1888. That's where my mom comes from. As one of the 3 sons of Mark and Sarah Veach. Like many ball players of his day, Veach was of Irish descent, and the male members of his family were coal miners. His father moved the family to Madisonville, Kentucky, when Veach was 12 years old, and he played his first organized baseball game at the relatively advanced age of 13. The following year, Veach quit high school to join his father, and eventually his brothers, working in the mines. What a terrible job that had to be, huh? Even while in the minor leagues, Veach continued to work there during the winters. While working almost all of his teenage years in the mines strengthened Veach, it may have also left him a little time to develop other baseball skills. When he was 17 years old, Veach moved to Herrin, Illinois, and began his professional career playing semi-pro baseball in the old Eastern Illinois Trolley League. He made very little money, but showed enough promise to be eventually signed 5 years later as a pitcher by the Peoria Distillers of the 3I League. After a few games in the 1910 season, Peoria farmed Veach out to the Kankakee, Illinois team in the Northern Association, where he reportedly posted a 10-5 record as a pitcher. The next year, Veach was back with Peoria, who moved him to the outfield to take advantage of the power he showed as a hitter. Kind of same thing as with Ruth. The move was successful as Veach finished the year hitting .297. During his time, Peoria employed Charlie Barrett, a former scout for the St. Louis Browns, as a fundamentals coach. Barrett helped to polish Veach's fielding and base running skills. In 1912, the year my dad was born, Veach's batting average improved to .325 before he was sold to Indianapolis of the American Association. There, he hit .285 during a brief 2-month stay before the Detroit Tigers purchased the 24-year-old and added him to their late-season roster. When Veach arrived in Detroit in late 1912, the Tigers had been platooning left fielders for a number of years, trying to find a player who could both hit and field. The aging Davy Jones made the majority of starts in 1912, but hitting leadoff, he had driven in only 24 runs in 99 games that year. So when Veach hit .342 and drove in 15 runs in just 23 games at the end of 1912, manager Huey Jennings knew he had found the third piece of his outfield. In later years, Veach remarked how kind Jennings had been to him and how patient he was in developing his skills as a ball player. Over the next 2 years, Veach established himself as an everyday player, hitting over .270, driving in an average of 68 runs a year. Base runners also learned about his powerful arm, as he started a string of 9 consecutive seasons with 14 or more outfield assists, and that would be where you throw the guy out at a base. Despite his small size, Veach swung the bat like a powerful slugger. Down at the end of the handle, and with similar results. Years ago, I choked up on the bat, later explained to F.C. Lane. Choking up has the effect of shortening the bat, and it seemed reasonable to suppose the shorter the bat, the more quickly you could swing to meet the ball. In theory, this was sound, but in practice, I found it didn't work. Most of the really good hitters swing from the handle of the bat, a free swinger with a long, beautiful stroke. Veach put his shoulders, and not just his wrists and arms, into each of his swings. Despite his aggressive approach, Veach walked more often than he struck out, and never ranked among the league leaders in the latter category. By 1915, Veach was just entering his prime, and his offensive performance placed him near the top of the league. He hit .313 that year, and tied Sam Crawford for the league lead in RBI with 112. He also led the league in doubles with 40, was second in extra base hits, and third on both his team and the AL in hits and total bases. In 1915 also marked the last full productive year of Crawford's career, and it was clear that Veach was poised to take over as the man counted on to drive in the key runs for the Tigers. The team was an offensive juggernaut that roared to a 100-win season, which left them only 2.5 games short of the pennant. From 1916 to the war-shortened 1918 season, Veach continued his assault on AL pitchers, hitting over .300 in 1916 and 1917, leading the league in RBI in 1917 and 1919, and finished among the league leaders in hits, doubles, and triples each year. In 1919, the Tigers rebounded with a winning season, and Veach had one of the best years of his career. He posted a .355 batting average, second only to Cobb in all of baseball, and the highest total of his career. In addition, he led the league in hits, 191, tied with Cobb, doubles, 45, and triples, 17. I guess Cobb was pretty much automatic. He won the batting title 12 years in a row. Only one MVP, though, but I think they had some kind of rule back then that you were only allowed to win it once. I think Babe only won one, too. Veach's hitting style seemed tailor-made for the free-swinging offensive era that followed it. Yet 1920 saw the 32-year-old Veach's offensive production dip slightly, as he batted .307 and drove in 113 runs. On September 17th against the Red Sox, he had one of the best games of his career, collecting 6 hits and hitting for the cycle. However, when Jennings stepped down as the Tigers manager at the end of the season, and Cobb was named to replace him, life as a Tiger would never be the same for Veach. Veach was just not Cobb's type of player. It had bothered Cobb for years that Veach did not seem to take baseball very seriously, and was known to joke with opposing players, even pitchers, which Cobb would not tolerate. Determined to wipe the ever-present smile off of Veach's face, Cobb instructed Harry Howman to yell insults at him throughout the 1921 season to make him angry. Some people play better when they're angry. The ploy may have worked, because Veach's offensive numbers improved in almost every category in 1921. In fact, the Tigers' starting outfield had a season for the ages, banging out 641 hits for a combined .372 batting average and driving in 368 runs. That's production. Veach also led the outfield in putouts with 384. Showing how far he had come as a fielder. The team's pitching, however, was once again too weak to contend for a pennant. The Tigers finished with a losing record. At the end of the season, Cobb broke his promise to Howman and refused to admit that he was behind the year-long hazing. When Howman tried to explain, Veach did not believe him and carried a grudge for many years. In the winter and spring leading up to the 1922 season, Cobb tried to trade Veach to the Yankees for shortstop Everett Scott, but the Yankees would not budge despite the early suspensions of sluggers Babe Ruth and Bob Musial. Veach responded to his manager's lack of confidence in him by almost mirroring his excellent 1921 season, collecting 202 hits, driving in 126 runs, scoring and recording 375 putouts. Despite this continued excellence at the plate and in the field, and perhaps as a consequence of his salary holdout before the 1923 season, Cobb continued to try to replace his 34-year-old left fielder. Veach hit .321 in 1923, but had only half his normal 600 at-bats. Due partly to injuries and partly to increased playing time for the talented newcomer, Heine Manush. In January of 1924, Cobb sold Veach to the last-place Red Sox for an undisclosed amount of cash. Veach was not happy about how his Tiger career had ended. I don't blame him, nor the prospect of going to the most offensively anemic team in the league. After an initial holdout, he joined his Red Sox teammates before spring training and ended up having a decent season, driving in 99 runs and hitting .295. At his first game back in Detroit on May 18th, the local fans thanked Veach for his years as a Tiger by presenting him with a diamond ring. That was nice. Veach returned the favor that same year, arranging a tryout with Detroit future Hall of Fame second baseman Charlie Gehringer. How about that? Huh. I didn't know that. Whom he had spotted in a Sandlot game. The 1924 season, however, marked Veach's last as a major league starter. In May 1925, after only 5 at-bats, he was traded to the Yankees, who later sold him to the Senators in August for the waiver price. Used almost exclusively as a bench player, he had the distinction in 1925 of both pinch hitting for Babe Ruth in one game and breaking up Ted Lyon's bid for a no-hitter with 2 outs in the 9th in another. Finally, by ending the year with the Senators, he was able to play in his first and only World Series. Characteristically, although he had only 2 plate appearances, he drove in a run. From 1926 to 29, Veach played for the Toledo Mud Hens of the American Association. In his first 3 years with Toledo, he averaged 157 games a season, hit over .360 each year, and won the batting crown in 1928 with a .382 average. At the age of 40, he was a ball player who quite possibly should have made the Hall of Fame. Had his career lasted longer, he had a career average of .310, and the gray ink method of Hall of Fame appraisal shows him with more points than the average Hall of Famer. Veach spent most of his career with the Tigers at the time of Ty Cobb. Besides Cobb, he played in the Detroit outfield alongside Wahoo Sam Crawford, Harry Heilman, and Heine Manush, all Hall of Famers. Both the Cobb-Crawford-Veach outfield and the Cobb-Heilman-Veach outfield have been said to be among the best of all time. Where are all the World Series titles, though? They just kept coming up short. Veach was the cleanup hitter on those teams and stood among the American League leaders for most runs batted in during most of his career. These great totals are in part the result of having great hitters in front of him, the aforementioned Cobb and Heilman, but also the underrated Donnie Bush, who had an excellent on-base percentages as the Tigers' leadoff hitter. Veach was an above-average fielder. While he did not often lead the league in hitting categories, he was in the top 10 in batting average 6 times, and in the top 10 in slugging 5 times, the top 10 RBIs 10 times, leading the league 3 times. He tended to steal around 20 bases a year. While Veach's prime was spent during the dead ball era, if he just could have made it to the live ball era, there's no telling what he could have done. 30 home runs a year definitely seems a possibility. His playing style was not typical of the period. He was a slugger who held the bat from the end of the handle and swung for power. He had no use for a type of scientific hitting preferred by Cobb, as he was not one to try to choke up on the bat, bunt, or hit and run, or other strategies favored by hitters of the time. His differences with Cobb ran also to temperament, as he was a laid-back person who took things in stride. In contrast to Cobb, who saw life as a no-hold-barred competition. He was of Irish origin, growing up in Madisonville, Kentucky, in a family of coal miners. He was a latecomer to baseball, not starting to play until his teenage years, and not reaching the upper minors until the age of 24, when he had a brief stint with the Indianapolis Indians of the American Association. In his first taste of the show, he hit .342 with 15 RBI. In 23 games and never looked back. Veach's prime came from 1915 to 1921. He hit .313 with 40 doubles, 112 RBI. 1915, as the Tigers won 100 games, batted .300. In 1916 and 1917, led the league in RBI in both 1917 and 1918. Then hit a whopping .355 with 191 hits, 45 doubles, and 17 triples in 1919. He fell back to 307 in 1920, but drove in 113 runs. On September 17th that season, he had 6 bases and hit for the cycle in a game against the Boston Red Sox. After that season, Huey Jennings, who had managed the Tigers since 1908, stepped down and was replaced by Cobb. The Georgia Peach decided that he would change Veach's attitude, forcing Heilman to yell insults to Veach throughout the 21 season in order to keep him on edge. All 3 outfielders had a great season, with Veach batting .338, 207 hits. Cobb was still not satisfied. He tried to trade Veach to the New York Yankees in the offseason, but Veach proved he was still a star by banging out 202 hits with 126 RBI in 1922. He then hit .321 in 1923, but missed part of the season to injuries. Lost playing time to a young Heine Manouche. In January 1924, Veach was sold to the Boston Red Sox and finished out his career playing decently for them in 1924. He hit .295 and drove in 99 runs, and for 3 teams in 1925. His only postseason appearance was with the Senators in the '25 World Series. He had 1 at-bat and drove in a run. It was his last Major League appearance. He did continue to play in the minors for a few years with the Toledo Mud Hens of the American Association from 1926 to 1929. I played on that field. It's still in good shape. And the New Jersey Skeeters of the International League in 1930. Veach's manager while in Toledo was a playing manager by the name of Casey Stengel. He won the Double-A batting crown with .382 at the age of 40. He could have still been playing pro ball if it wasn't for Cobb in 1928. After hanging up his glove, he moved back to Detroit, where he purchased an interest in a coal company, underwent a serious abdominal operation in 1943, and was never fully healthy afterwards. He died at home on August 7, 1945. The similarity scores method shows the most similar player to Veach, Dixie Walker, but perhaps a more valid comparison would be his contemporary Sherry McGee. According to a 1930 news article, his son, Robert Veach, played for the Rochester Red Wings briefly before dying in an automobile crash at the age of 18. That had to break his heart. AL hits leader, 1919. 2-time AL doubles leader, 1915 and 1919. AL triples leader, 1919. 3-time AL RBI leader, 1915, 1917, and 1918. 100 runs scored, seasons 1, 1921. 100 RBI season, he had 6 of them. 1915, 1917, 1919 through 1922. 200 hit seasons, 2, 1921 and 1922 later in his career. That's pretty good. Robert Hayes Veach, one of my favorite Tigers of all time. Survived by his wife and sons, he was entombed in the Whitechapel Memorial Cemetery in Southfield, Michigan. That was a good story. We'll do another one. I'll pick someone else out for next time. I hope you enjoyed the story of Bobby Veach. For some reason, I took an immediate liking to him.